Good morning. My name is Jeannie Fiore. I'm here this morning to talk with Nimmi Biju about her experience before and after moving to the United States. Nimmi, please tell us a little bit about yourself to get us started.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Nimmi, and me and my husband are originally from India. We moved to the United States about 20 years ago. We moved to Midland almost like 7 to 8 years back. I live here with my family, my husband and my 2 kids. Currently, my husband works in Denver, so he lives there. So he visits us like once in 2 to 3 weeks. We were introduced to First United Methodist Church by Mrs. Kroon. She is my daughter's violin teacher. We have been coming to this church since almost 5-6 years.
Good. Well, I'm glad you're here. Thank you, Nimmi.
Thank you.
And can you tell us a little about your journey moving here from India to the United States?
Yeah, sure.
What brought you here?
Yeah, so my husband's job. So back in India, he used to work for a pharmaceutical company in the research and development department, the R&D department. So the company that he worked for in India has a branch in the United States. So he and his team were working on a product which was manufactured on a pilot scale, like a small scale. So the product got US FDA approval, so it could be manufactured on a large scale. So the company in US invited him, like, would he be interested to come to the US and lead the R&D team. So he thought it was a great opportunity, like career-wise. So, we were newly married and we had never been abroad. So we thought, why not? And so that's how we came here.
Well, I'm glad you're all here.
Thank you.
I understand that only about 2% of the population in India is Christian. Can you tell me how you came to meet Jesus Christ while you were living in India?
Yeah, so I was raised in a Christian family. Both my parents are strong believers. My mom especially has a very strong influence in me accepting Christ as my savior. So I grew up in a place which is like a small town, 2 to 3 hours from Mumbai. So Mumbai, earlier it was known as Bombay. It's similar to New York, so it's a very cosmopolitan city. So we didn't have a church back then in my home place. So we were 15, 20 families in that community. So we used to meet in everybody's homes. So every Sunday afternoon, we used to meet in somebody's home. The women, we used to typically sing hymns. The males used to typically give a message. And then we used to have a lunch, So it was sort of like a prayer meeting.
Since you were born into Christianity, that it was pretty natural for you then to experience Christianity. It's my understanding that maybe some parts of India, some Christians may be persecuted. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, unfortunately, yes. So like you said, because I was in Bombay, I did not face any challenge growing up as a Christian, but there are certain parts where fellow Christians face trials and tribulations. So the current government has publicly said that his government will not tolerate religious discrimination. However, his actions prove otherwise. So currently there are some anti-conversion laws, the laws opposing the conversion of Hindus to other religions, especially Christianity, in several Indian states. And these laws have been used against pastors and evangelists. And conversely, there are reconversion ceremonies. So these are ceremonies which, encourage conversion of Christians or Muslims back to Hinduism. And those kind of ceremonies are encouraged and are becoming increasingly common. Now, these kind of activities are typically more in underdeveloped states where the education rate is pretty low and poverty is, prevalent. The main persecutors are the Hindu extremist groups, local government officials, and nationalist Hindus who seek to purify India by making it entirely Hindu. So currently almost 80% of the population are Hindus, but they do want to make it like 100% Hindutva nation. So the extremists view Christian converts as traitors to the homeland, and churches have been demolished and burnt in these areas. Worship gatherings have been disrupted, Bibles have been confiscated and destroyed, and so many pastors and believers are being beaten and being jailed. So there is also I'm aware of an organization called the Voice of Martyrs, the VOM. It has a very active role in India, and this organization helps the to free the pastors and, distribute Bibles in the impoverished areas.
Wow. It's really difficult to hear about those experiences since it's just so, literally foreign to us.
Yes.
We're free to practice our religion here completely freely.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about any challenges that your family has faced living as immigrants in the United States?
So initially when we came here, and even now, I guess sometimes like language is our barrier. So typically in India, we follow British English, so our pronunciation, and we do have an accent. So that makes it difficult for us to communicate and others to understand us. Also, I have a tendency to speak fast. So I have to make a very conscious effort to speak slowly so that people can understand me better. Then there are certain cultural differences. So for example, back home, if you want to go to a friend's place, you just go there, and if they're there, we just enjoy a cup of tea or have some snacks and have a great time. And if the door is locked, that's fine. But when I came here, I saw that everything is more formal, like you have to phone and take an appointment and things like that. Also in our back home, like we treat everybody like who comes to our home like a guest as a god. So meaning unless of course the person has to rush and go and do something, otherwise typically we invite them in, and offer them some water and a cup of tea or something like that. And so like I had an incident like when I was studying at the University of Cincinnati, I had a friend and I had to borrow a textbook from her. She lived almost an hour away from my place, and I had just started UC, so I mean, she was my friend, but I didn't know her very well, and she didn't know me very well. So me and my husband, we drove to her home, and we were standing at the door. She gave me her textbook, and then we came back home. And then on the way back home, I told my husband, wasn't she rude? She didn't even invite us in. So I was sort of like, at that point, I was not very familiar with the culture here. So I felt sort of it was a rude thing. But when later on, as I became more familiarized with the customs here, I think it's pretty common, like, if you're not coming for lunch or dinner, I mean, you don't need to necessarily invite that person in or things like that. So I wouldn't say that as a challenge, but these are just some differences. And it's been 20 years now in this country, so we have learned to adapt.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because it made me think of when I was a child. When we might be out with my parents somewhere, we would always stop to visit with someone, and unannounced, unexpected, and people welcomed you. There was always a pot of coffee, and as a child, I would sit in the corner and play, or people would always just drop by our house. It was very common. So I don't know if that's the difference between 50 years in time between America and India, or rural versus urban life, but it's interesting to think your childhood would have been more like mine as far as dropping in and saying hello. It's interesting,
yeah.
Other challenges you'd like to mention, or are you?
Oh, yeah, one other thing that I would like to mention is like, so again, like I said, it's been almost 20 years now, so we are more comfortable in our skin now. But back when we came, especially if we go to a public place like a library or a shopping place, I typically look for a diverse culture, and if I only see Caucasians, then I'm a little bit uncomfortable. I feel like I'm an outsider, I'm not fitting in. Yeah. But like I said, again, it's so many years past now, so I'm more comfortable now.
Okay, and hopefully comfortable in Midland. And since the United States is known as a country of immigrants, and we have many different ethnic groups over the United States, are there any spiritual legacies that you can think of that Christian immigrants can share with Christians in the United States to maybe enhance our experience?
So for us, like I mentioned earlier, back in our home, like I said earlier, we didn't have a church building. So back then we used to meet in everybody's homes. We used to have lunch after every prayer meeting. And then now, like, we have a church now in our hometown. So we have now almost like 150 families. So we like have lunch after the service every 3 months. So either it's like a potluck, or 1 or 2 families, they sponsor the lunch, or everybody comes in and tries to cook for the, all the members. So we feel like, I think food is an important part, and it's crossing all the barriers. Everybody eating from the same table, that sort of makes us feel together, feel connected, like a big church family.
So breaking bread together.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. So that is one thing. Then the other thing is, I know our church is also very active in mission work, like, we have a clothes drive and things like that. So even in our church, like, we do lots of things to helping the poor people, providing food and clothing, providing books for, students who cannot afford tuition fees and things like that.
And I'd say maybe as a closing comments, if you have any thoughts on how we can better understand and learn from the lives of immigrants around us?
Yeah, so like earlier we discussed about the trials and the persecutions faced by other fellow believers in India. So I think we are really very fortunate and blessed that we can, practice Christianity without any fear. And even in some Muslim countries, you cannot speak about Christianity in the open, or you cannot preach publicly about the gospel. So we really are very blessed and fortunate that we have religious freedom in this country. And in general, I would say, like, I think people, like even at FUMC when we first came here, there were not many diverse, like people from different nationalities, but we felt very warm and welcoming. And in general, I feel like people here are, in general, the country, people are very warm and welcoming and accepting. And we are very grateful for that.
Well, thank you for sharing with us, Nimmi.
Thank you.
It's been really fun and helpful to learn more about your experience, and I'd like to even learn more.